welcome to The Audible, presented by Trader Joe's. I'm Ralph Russo here with Stuart Mandel and Bruce Feldman, my colleagues and friends from The Athletic. Later today, we'll get to your burning mailbag questions, and we'll talk about Dave Portnoy, Ohio State, and all that drama going on in Columbus ahead of this week's big game between the Buckeyes and Longhorns. But first, Lee Corso is retiring. Lee Corso has been a part of college football and a part of our lives for such a long time. We can hardly remember, guys, a time before Lee Corso wasn't donning a mascot head to essentially launch us off into a wild ride of college football Saturday. And we'd like to, sort of get into maybe some memories of Lee and why he has been such a special part of college football. So Stu, Bruce, always good to be here with you guys. It's fun to be sort of leading in the show. I feel like I got my big boy pants on today.
Yeah, congrats.
How is everybody? Yeah, hey, it actually went pretty well. But let's talk about Coach Corso as far as again, what this person has meant to college football.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying this to somebody else. First of all, your perspective is always based right on your age and when you started to follow college football. And for me, it was right around the time game day started going on the road. And so I don't know a time in college football when there wasn't a Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit and eventually Reese Davis live from a stadium somewhere, and then Corso putting on the mascot head at the end. And when you think about the chronology of it, college football, as we know, for most of its history until the late 90s, was a very regional sport, right? If you're a Big Ten fan, you mostly cared about the Big Ten, et cetera, et cetera. And it started to become more and more national once we had an actual national championship. Well, at the same time that's happening, Lee Corso is going out he's at Ohio State one week, he's at Texas one week, wherever, and people around the country are tuning in to watch their game. And they're seeing all these different places and they're seeing him and these crazy antics. And so I kind of give him a lot of credit for exposing college football fans around the country to places and teams and obviously mascots that they wouldn't otherwise have been familiar with.
For me, just having worked at ESPN for a long time, we would have our offsite before the season where everybody would come in, whether you worked, whatever capacity you covered college football. If you were a game crew where you almost were never in Bristol or in the Connecticut area, you were in. And what I remembered early on as a huge college football fan being there, and this is when I'm in my, early 30s, was being in we would have it like the Bristol Radisson or the Sheraton somewhere nearby. It wasn't like the most extravagant places, but everybody be there. And I remember at one point, having lunch, and the table I was at was Doug Flutie and Andre Ware, who obviously both won Heisman's. Doug Flutie was a legendary figure in the sport. And those guys were, obviously big deals in the history of the sport. But it felt like, to me, the biggest star at the event was always Corso, who quite honestly, I don't think any of us remember him as the coach at Indiana or Northern Illinois or a lot of the places he was before. We certainly don't remember him as a player. But I think what really popped was he was an entertainer and he got the medium really well. And I think he got the kind of ethos of the sport to some of what Stu was saying in terms of there's a fun side of it and everything else. I mean, a lot of us have reverence for the late Beano Cook for similar reasons. They were felt like they were uniquely ours, college football characters, right? I'm not saying that people in the NFL and the NFL fans don't know who Lee Corso is, but I think what he was very tied to the sport. Whereas as much as we all, have loved Brent Musburger as an announcer and as a persona, You Are Looking Live to me always felt like the NFL Today and NFL. I know he would when he. Well, again, Stu.
Not for me.
It's us.
Yeah.
It's us, Stu. Yeah.
Stu, you're showing your lack of age or your whatever here. But for a lot of people who either are big NFL fans and they could be your age, because that's we're not that far apart. Like Brent Musburger, You Are Looking Live was the NFL Today. That's what it was. It kicked off for most people. Didn't have. There wasn't ESPN. There wasn't like these 12-hour pregame shows. You really didn't get a window into the NFL or till anything until like whatever it was, a half hour before the games kicked off back then. It was different. So with Corso, to me, it was just this guy who obviously had great history at Florida State and had seen a lot and had the perspective, but he was just such a presence and such an entertainer. And I think he was fun to be around, and everybody kind of wanted to be around him. It was just, he's different than almost anybody else I can think of who's been on TV in college football.
So a couple of things. Often, one of the things that make Corso what he is and why he is so beloved, and again, he will end his career donning the heads in the place where it started, right? I think Ohio State was the first time he did that deal with the Buckeye head, and which is a very cool way to go out for him. A couple of things that made him, I would say, unique is the right word there. I know sometimes that word gets used improperly. He became a big star not because of his coaching stardom, right? So many times now on TV, the guys who become the big stars are the big quarterback, like Saban. I mean, Saban's great on TV, but he's on TV because he's Nick Saban. Corso was a, moderately successful college football coach who, as Bruce said, got TV. Showbiz, baby. I think that was the line. I remember doing a story, and I'll get into that next, a story on him and Kirk Herbstreit, 5 or 6 years back when I was still at the AP, and it was clearly becoming a situation where like he was slowing down. He was doing less episodes. Remember, he had a stroke in 2009.
Can you believe that was 2009?
It's incredible. I just looked it up. I just looked it up while you guys were talking, and it just bowled me over. Ever since he came back from the stroke, they needed to accommodate him in ways that were frankly quite touching. I got a little look behind the scenes on that. Again, 4 or 5 years ago, I went up to Bristol. They were doing their pre-season preview show, which is not done on site. It's done on Bristol. And I just sort of watched them tape the show. And the relationship between Herbstreit and Corso gets talked about a lot and has been written about a lot. It really is almost father-son. And during that taping, there was a portion in between segments where I can't remember the player's name, but there was a player who Lee wanted to talk about. He was writing the name down, and Kirk at some point was like, okay, here's how you say his name. Here's how and here's how it's spelled. And at a certain point, Kirk sort of touched Lee's arm and said, let me do that for you. And he wrote the name out on the card for him. Very small moment, nothing particularly spectacular, but it really showed just that connection that the two of them had and how much it meant to Kirk especially, but also Reese and Desmond and everybody on that show to make sure that that Coach Corso could do the job. They rallied around him because they loved him and they wanted him to be able to do that job. And after doing that story, I had come to the conclusion that basically this guy can do this show for as long as he wants. And at times, to be frank, there were times within the last few years that his speech had slowed down. It almost felt a little uncomfortable to the point where you were like, man, should he still be doing this? But ultimately, after seeing that moment, I always managed to get to the place for myself where I want him to do this as long as he wants to do it. And I'm glad that ultimately he is going out on his own terms.
Yeah, I'm glad they're doing it this way, right? It would have been kind of a bummer if we got a press release in February that said, yep, that was the last Corso. He's retired. You're not going to see him on the show again. We get one more taste of it. And it's just, you couldn't work out more perfectly to have, like you said, Ralph, back at Ohio State, this enormous game, 1 versus 3. It's going to be great. I would just say real quick, I think I've really appreciated over the last 10 years or so, Game Day started doing these celebrity guest pickers. And they've been some, at times, some really big celebrities. Like we all remember Katy Perry at Ole Miss, at Timothy Chalamet last year. And Corso gives it to them, right? He's not in awe. He's like either does a not so fast, my friend, or good pick. It's been wonderful television for all these years. Definitely going to miss it. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that?
Again, I really appreciate the fact that he's a television star because he's good on television in a space where often the stars in sports broadcasting are stars not so much because they're great on TV, but because they were big stars coming to TV. Right. And maybe they slowly develop into good broadcasters. He is a star broadcaster who is great at TV.
The one, when you were saying that, Ralph, the one, I don't say it's a parallel, but the maybe the predecessor or the person who kind of laid the track for this in a different format because they were a game analyst, but again, was not a great revered coach, but was a uniquely ESPN, especially back in those days, figure is Dick Vitale. Like Dick Vitale became the breakout star. And the passion, you can't fake it. I mean, as somebody who is like, I think Dick Vitale is probably a little more polarizing than Corso is, but as somebody who is like seen, firsthand and up close what Dick Vitale has been able to do for so many people when it comes to pediatric cancer and really important things beyond just basketball. It's like, but you can't fake the passion kind of thing. And I think that's what comes through. A lot of people might try it, but it usually falls flat. But I think that's the thing. And a week or so ago, our colleagues, Justin Williams did a story about a lot of game day old crew, especially talking about their reverence for Lee Corso. And I think it was actually Tim Brando who may have said this in the story. And he'll like it whether he said it or not. But I think he said after he was with him early in the show's existence, and Corso referenced Dick Vitale, he saw that path and he obviously leaned into it, and it paid off, brilliantly for ESPN and honestly for college football.
Yeah. Can I tell my Dick Vitale story? Do you mind?
Of course, go for it.
Okay. Because you're right. Corso and Vitale, I'd be interested to know how well they know each other, because they do seem like kindred spirits, right? They bring such similar energy and they've had such similar paths. And they are, in many ways adorable. And they've also overcome health issues. It's been great to have them both around their sports as long as possible. The one thing on Vitale, because I'm not around college basketball that much, but back when I worked in Mississippi, I was covering a game at Mississippi State. He was there. I think Kentucky, Mississippi State, they were both ranked. And okay, condense. I knew Dick Vitale's niece. We were friends in Denver, just randomly. It was one of these weird things. Like, oh yeah, you're a sports writer. My uncle is Dick Vitale. That's pretty cool. So I go down to press row, and I'm like, Dick, hi, my name is Ralph Russo. You don't know me. I'm sports writer for the AP. I know your niece, and I gave the name, and he just lit up. Was so excited because I knew his niece and how much he loved his niece, and I have to get you a book and I'll sign the book, and that's I'm just that's so incredible, and I can't believe you know my niece, and I won't give her name, but my niece. It was just such a small thing for him to be so excited about and so enthusiastic about meeting me and bringing up his niece. I just thought it was very cool. And my interactions with Corso have not been that frequent either, but they are similar in the fact that he's always on, he's always enthusiastic, he's always happy to be talking to you and understanding what you want and really loving college football. Maybe not quite the super over the top energy as Dickie V, especially later in life, but nonetheless, I just find them to be such kindred spirits, and that they are always seemingly very happy to see you, right? Even if they don't know you.
And that's the best. It's always, sometimes they say don't meet your heroes, right? But I always love when somebody like that, who's so prominent, is also a really nice guy. That's obviously not always the case. Well, guys, I didn't think pregame shows would be such an integral part of the story of Ohio State, Texas. We are going to talk about the Fox, Barstool, Ohio State drama this week. Bruce, do you need to recuse yourself like, Ward Manuel recuses himself in the committee room when they talk about Michigan?
I will see what you guys say and see what I can comment on without getting myself in hot water. How about that?
All right. So for people who haven't been following this, front office sports. Well, first of all, I think it actually goes back to Bobby Carpenter, the former Ohio State linebacker, who has a podcast and kind of put it out there, I believe, maybe a week ago. Hey, Ohio State is not happy about Dave Portnoy coming to town, right? Dave Portnoy, noted Michigan super fan, but also like one step or many steps beyond that, like has openly bragged about helping to recruit Bryce Underwood, right? Helping to get his big NIL deal. And then obviously very critical of Ryan Day and Ohio State during the whole Connor Stallions thing. So that was your first kind of rumbling. And then on Monday night, Front Office Sports reports that actually Ohio State has banned Dave Portnoy from the stadium entirely, which I was like, really? Is he like on a terrorist? Like they have pictures of him outside the gates. Like, don't let this guy in. I think it's probably not quite that extreme, but yeah, I mean, the very next morning, Ross Bjork, Ohio State AD, says that's not true. Fox voluntarily decided they weren't going to put him on the main set for that second hour. Like they're outside the stadium at first, but then that last hour where they're on the field.
It's actually the third hour of the show. This is a 3-hour show this week.
Yep, third hour this week.
So it's 2 hours outside the stadium, and then the third hour is inside the stadium.
We're talking specifically about the last hour when they would be on the field. So now you've got this war of words going back and forth. And I don't know that people know necessarily that they should believe necessarily either side here.
There's a lot of room for semantics to work their way through here and everybody to have cover for what the actual truth is. Ohio State is a lot of people coming into town. I was, for something else, I was texting with their great SID, Jerry Emig.
Also retiring this year. Yeah.
Also retiring this year. And a great dude. How many credentials do you have? And the number was something like 330. And that's not counting all the production people for the actual production, as Bruce would know, like game production, right. not pre-game production, but game production. So there's a lot going on in Ohio State. They have 2 pre-game shows there. So I think there's a lot of cover for we did not credential him because he is not part of the show when they go inside the stadium, right? Again, so whether that means banned or whether that means he's not essential, so we didn't give him a credential because we have a lot of other people we have to credential. Let's leave that aside. The other thing is the person who is most free to speak here, because it is his brand to speak and speak up loudly, is Dave Portnoy. So he, of course, comes out, statement, calls out Ohio State, calls out Ohio State soft. Fox is in a position where I think they probably just want to stay out of this. Yeah, because why would you want to upset anybody in this port and be part of this? You just want to at least publicly stay out of this. And for Ohio State, the best thing you can sort of say is, well, we didn't ban anybody. We just gave out our credentials the way we give them out, and we're moving on here. So created a weird situation where, as Stu, as you said, it's hard to know exactly what the truth is here, but the person who, with the loudest and the most brash way of talking, gets to grab the stage while everybody else sort of has to concede that or cede into the background.
Some would say, Ralph, that even though it is true, it does Fox no good to put out a statement here. Maybe they might have a bit of a interest in getting that out there or having somebody get that out there, because we just spent 15 minutes on Lee Corso. That show is completely going to be the center of attention. Oh, but now people are talking about big noon kickoff 3 days before or 4 days before the game. So I don't think it's necessarily bad for Fox that this got out. I think it's probably not great for Ohio State's image. I will say, to defend Ohio State, I wouldn't want this guy, we're not just talking Desmond Howard, right, will be there. He's a Michigan guy, right? Matt Langert's a USC guy, Brady Quinn's a Notre Dame guy. But Portnoy, if he's truly recruiting against your school, do I want him on my sideline? No. But you can't win that PR war. You just end up, like you said, the word soft keeps getting thrown around. I just think the whole thing's very awkward. It's maybe we can bring Bruce in on this, but like, you don't hear this kind of drama between ESPN and the SEC in Alabama, right? Or Georgia. And I feel like things have gotten a little frosty, frankly, between Fox and some of these Big Ten schools. First of all, around noon kickoffs, right? Penn State fans have made it abundantly clear how ticked off they were last year that that their biggest game was not a whiteout game, it was a noon game. And then Ohio State, I think, got the noon kickoff like 7 or 8 times last year, and now they're furious. And Ohio State tried to get the game, and Fox was willing to move it to Sunday nights, but Texas didn't want that. Who can blame them? So, like, Fox is as the Big Ten's most important partner. That is who pays them. They actually own over 60% of the Big Ten network. So it's not ideal for anybody that this is getting so nasty.
I also think that, we heard some of this. I was on the road with Big Noon the last few years. I'm not this year. I mean, I'll probably be on some of the shows from the studio, but I think, the Big Ten did the deal, right? The ADs and presidents are part of all that. It's like Ohio State is is a huge property here, and it does big ratings. Now, I know this last year that we ended up in Columbus more than anybody anticipated. I don't think anybody saw Indiana being undefeated in November, but that became a big game to grab. I don't know if in retrospect you sit there and think, oh, well, Indiana's going to be undefeated, so let's not worry about getting the Ohio State Marshall game in September. Or, it's just because I don't think anybody wants to be at a place that many times that feels stale. They're like, why are you guys here now? It's a lot of that, right? I think that on top of it, as Ralph said, like, probably the biggest beneficiary of this is Dave Portnoy of all of it, because everybody's talking about him and he's able to be this outsider who is now become a big storyline going into this week, right? And I don't know how. I know there's probably a lot of conversations between some of my bosses on my Fox job and some of the higher ups in the Big Ten about it's a lot of relationships. But right now, I think some of this stuff is less than ideal for anybody in terms of how it is. Like you said, Stu, I don't think Ohio State, they just won a national title. They have a huge game coming up. I don't think they in one hand, you're saying, well, why would you even care about Dave Portnoy? It feels very small for anybody. I get why fans might care about it. By anybody in Ohio State, I don't think they want to be talking about this, certainly. And even if you say, Ross Bjork, the AD, if he's saying it's a non-story, the more people talk about it, the more it becomes a story, And I don't think any of us anticipated or really wanted to talk about this today, but it's out there, and that's people are fascinated by it to some degree, because a lot of people really like drama. As much as they love college football, they love drama, and this is drama.
Bruce, I didn't get the sense yesterday when this came out that Ohio State fans were the ones upset about it. Like, they're upset about noon kickoffs, like with a fury. But Dave Portnoy thing, no, this is people inside the football building, I think it's safe to say, who maybe don't like being attacked over and over again on a
and if they are there, I think they're really trying to get their head coach Ryan Day's back, because they know he's been slammed a lot of times. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Dave Portnoy flew a plane or contributed to a plane flying over the stadium at one point.
So just a couple of quick things. Like, can you ever imagine one of the NFL partner networks hiring somebody for one of their pregame shows who trolls the Super Bowl winning coach? Actively, harshly trolls the Super Bowl winning coach? Absolutely not, right? And this is not, I am not being critical of Dave Portnoy. He has built an empire. I consume some Barstool content, or at least I used to be more of a pardon my take guy, maybe not as much anymore. It's not a critique of that. I want to be very clear. But the idea that Fox would hire someone who does what he does to their most important team within their Big Ten contract. Now you can say Michigan and Ohio State are 1 and 1A. I get that. Okay, maybe they're equals. Again, I might be a little more Ohio State is 1 and Michigan is 1A. It's still a little crazy to me that they would do that they would take that approach. The last thing I would say is, how much do you have to put up with somebody being a jerk to you? Like what is the level?
Ralph, you haven't watched much of this show for a while, but I've put up with Stu for a long, long time. And you know, here we are.
I guess so. I don't want to be long-winded here, so but how much? How much does Ohio State have to say? Well, Ryan's a public figure, so he just has to eat it.
No,
I just don't know. Like, I can understand Ohio State's position here of being like, I don't want to work blue here, but like, screw that. Why do we have to put up with this?
I don't think Ohio State's in the wrong. If we don't know what they did exactly, but if they said we don't want this guy here, like, I think that's valid. I don't think, but the problem is, like I said, you're not on the winning side of that argument. Like, what you're saying is totally rational.
You're expected to eat it.
You're expected to eat it. Just forget, like Bruce was saying, like, who cares, right? Like, you got a big game this weekend. Why are you worrying about Dave Portnoy? That's the more of the
right. And I would simply say that if you kept calling me an a-hole in public and then asked to come to my house,
yeah, seriously,
and then you said nasty things about my wife, I'm supposed to let you in.
He wants to be on the living room couch for 3.5 hours.
Why are you so sensitive to me calling you an a-hole on national television?
I think.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess I'm just too sensitive. So, like, this is just a conversation that goes beyond just this particular topic. I just feel like we've gotten to a weird space of like why I'm too sensitive because you keep calling me an a-hole in public.
I think that this isn't a parallel, but I think I would like to talk it through just where the SEC has what a lot of people would look at as kind of the professional troll to some degree in Paul Feinbaum. The difference is, for the most part, Paul seems to be an equal opportunity offender. Right. Like, he's taking he'll take shots at whoever in the SEC, and I think that's probably the difference, right? Well, in this case,
I mean.
And he's dialed it back a little.
I mean, I can't take credit for this observation with Stephen Godfrey on a rival podcast, but when he got to the SEC network, everybody was like, oh, he's going to tone it down, right? Well, he did within the SEC. But if you notice how ESPN uses him now, he plays nice. He has on Lane Kiffin. He has on all the coaches, right? But then he'll go on Get Up or SportsCenter and take shots at Jim Harbaugh or Lincoln Riley. Like, now he's just trolling the other conferences figures.
Now, in fairness, we do not know if back in the day, the SEC leadership nixed certain people. It is entirely possible that a long while back, there were certain people they did not want to see on game day, and they might have not appeared again.
What are you?
Feinbaum got a talking to early on.
Yeah, who are you hinting at?
Early on there, Feinbaum got a talking to about when he first moved over to the SEC network about being overly critical. Like, that definitely happened. There was
definitely somebody else I know who appeared on game day, and I don't think that the SEC leadership a long time ago was happy about it, and they didn't come back for a little while.
I can't imagine Shane Gillis will be invited back anytime soon after accusing Nick Saban of
Alabama Jones is still one of the funniest lines ever on that show.
But Ralph, you brought up something I want to touch on, and I hope this isn't too big a tangent, but the relationship that TV has with the conferences in college football is so much more one-sided toward the TV networks than in the professionals. And I think that's entirely because it's segmented conference by conference. So, like, the NFL not only do the TV networks in Fox, ABC, Fox, CBS, all the NFL television partners, not only do they have to pay billions of dollars to show their games, but then the NFL gets to tell them, no, that game's going to Monday Night Football. You're not getting that one. Or, this game's going to be on a Saturday on NFL Network. I know the networks have some say in that, but the NFL makes that schedule, right? And I think it's the same way in the NBA and Major League Baseball. But in college, it's quite the opposite. It's, okay, we've paid our $1 billion to show the Big Ten. We're going to tell you, and we might not even tell you till 6 days in advance, what time your game's going to be on and on which network. And so the conversation about the noon kickoffs and about this are kind of from the same tree, right? It's like, if this were the NFL, Roger Goodell would tell Fox, you're not putting that guy on our broadcast. No way.
Look, they basically have said you want to, if you're ESPN, you want to get a Super Bowl, you better up your Monday night crew. None of the experimenting or everything. And that
when they shut down
what kind of games you get.
Remember when the NFL shut down that series? What was it called? Playmakers.
Yeah. Hey, our colleague Chris Vanini just wrote about it.
But in this case, Fox said, we think Dave Portnoy will be in Barstool are great for the show. And we're going to do it, whether Ryan Day or James Franklin, whoever likes it or not.
Yeah. It's yet another glimpse into the dysfunction of college football, frankly. Right? The fact that we have all this and we have the power of the networks, and the fact that different networks have different conferences and they promote their conferences as opposed to others is just not great. Right? All the networks promote the NFL,
right?
That have the NFL promote the NFL. All the networks do not promote college football. They promote their networks, which is not great for our sport.
We got to take a quick break, guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ralph,
let's take a little break here.
You're the cruise ship director. Go ahead.
Well, at least for this segment, I think I'm handing it off for the next one. But yeah, coming right up, we will. I don't know. What are we doing?
We're doing break. We're doing that new segment.
We got a new segment, Ralph. This is why you're not leading the ship.
Yeah, I totally dropped the ball here. Anyway, we're going to break. We're coming back with a new segment, and we'll find out what that new segment is as soon as we come back from break.
All right, guys, I wanted to throw something at you. I think we need a new segment into here to kind of kick off the weekend in addition to the mailbag. And so what I was thinking is, why don't we do each of us our breakout star of the upcoming weekend? So that's somebody who, maybe the diehard fans know, but most people don't, or there's somebody in a new place or than they were before who we think is going to have a really big weekend. I will start first so you can kind of get the gist of it. My guy in this case is actually not a player. It is the new defense coordinator at Miami, Corey Heatherman. He came from Minnesota, did a good job there, but was pretty under the radar, and been a really good defense coordinator in the FCS level. Miami, as you know, was atrocious on defense last year. They would have been a playoff team if the defense wasn't so bad. In comes Corey Heatherman. They're much more buttoned up. Everybody I've talked to down at UM has been really impressed by the scheme he runs and how they're able to execute it. Something I think we'll be keeping an eye on this weekend, because now you have CJ Carr getting his first big test here, and it's right out of the gate in South Florida. Miami last year was 91st in the country in giving up plays of 20 yards or more. 91st. Corey Heatherman's defense last year at Minnesota was number 4. Big difference. I don't know if they can make that kind of difference jump, but they have talent. And I think after this weekend, a lot more people will know that Miami really upgraded at defense coordinator.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I think Heatherman was a great hire. Yeah, really good hire for them. He, I got to know him when he was at JMU, and he did a really good job for Signetti. When they were, contending for national championships down there. Also, he's a Red Sox fan, and he and I have a kindred spirit. Have built up a bond over hating the Yankees. Me as a Mets fan, so that was good.
Aren't you a Mets fan? What is the Red Sox part to it?
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, but hating the Yankees is somewhere where Mets. Is something where Mets fans and Yankees fans and Red Sox fans can come together. I have a player and breakout star, but also a game I was really interested in highlighting too, because it's an really under the radar game, and it's Braylon Braxton is the quarterback of Southern Miss now. he was the quarterback of Marshall last year and was part of that really weird transition where the championship coach of the Sun Belt at Marshall, Charles Huff, ended up at the last place school in the Sun Belt, Southern Miss, and brought like 25 of his players with him. So Southern Miss is like a sneaky contender, as bad as they've been down for a few years in the Sun Belt. Braxton, they open up this weekend at home, which is a huge deal. As someone who worked down in Mississippi, that is a huge deal that Mississippi State is coming to Hattiesburg. Mississippi State was very bad last year, and I think they will be not very good this year, though maybe improved. I don't know if there's this like upset alert, but Braxton was the newcomer of the year last year. He basically, he led the Marshall to a conference championship, high ceiling guy, dual threat guy. Put an eye on him, and I suspect that could be a game that at a certain point on Saturday we're like, wait, what's going on in Hattiesburg? What's the score there in the second half? What channel is that game on? I think I need to find like Southern Miss against Mississippi State. So Braylon Braxton is my under the radar player, or my player, or my possible breakout player from the weekend, because I get a sneaky suspicion that Southern Miss might be able to give Mississippi State a game.
I like it. That will not be that hard to find. It's actually big ESPN. The problem is it's opposite the Ohio State-Texas game. So it might be one of those ones you like, if it's close, you're just sneaking it in. Maybe you're in the commercial breaks or whatnot. All right, I'm also going group of 5. And I realized that this might become out of date. The game that these guys are playing in might be over by the time you listen to the show. It's on Thursday. It's the first game, 5:30 Eastern. That's Boise State at USF. Obviously, the big storyline for Boise State, life after Ashton Jeanty. But going back to even when I was there for the Mountain West Championship, like they were already kind of looking ahead to this kid, Sire Gaines, true freshman last year, who had a 100-yard game in the opener against Georgia Southern, and then unfortunately injured himself out for the season. Really fast, explosive, highlight type guy. Now, it's not just him, though. This is one of those running back by committee situations. Malik Sherrod, who was at Fresno State last year, also coming off an injury, but ran for like 800-something yards the year before, was the star of Boise State's spring camp and preseason camp, and he's going to be the starter probably. So they play at USF. Not sure what to make yet of USF. They had a promising season 2 years ago, took a little bit of a step back. But that's in terms of like group of 5 against group of 5, that's a pretty big one.
Yeah, that is an interesting game on both sides. I think Alex Golish has done a pretty nice job at USF. They got derailed last year by a quarterback injury to Byron Brown.
He's back. He's good. He's a really good player.
Yeah, if he's healthy, that's an interesting dynamic to throw into the American race.
Sherrod is fun, by the way. One of my sources who's really big on the Broncos was like, nobody can touch him. He's like kind of the water bug. He's a tiny back, all-purpose guy. A little bit like Desmond Reed for Pitt, but just a fun player. They said they can't tackle him, they can't touch him. So keep an eye on that game. It should be a lot of fun.
I'm already having a little buyer's remorse, Ralph, on going with Tulane as the G5 playoff team.
Their schedule was really rough for the first month.
Tulane is a touchdown favorite this week against Northwestern. They are. Somebody asked me in my mailbag for some G5 over Power 4 upsets this week, and that was the first place I went, and I was like, oh, actually Tulane's a touchdown favorite. That would not be an upset. But here, real quick, I'll just get your guys' opinion on this. I went with 2 others. Coastal Carolina at Virginia is one of them, and Toledo at Kentucky.
Toledo's good. I mean, they're really talented.
Yeah, and Toledo's only like, I'm sorry to step on you there, Bruce, but like Toledo is only a 7-point underdog. Yeah. So that's not going to be a huge upset if it does happen. I don't think many people will be all that surprised, to be honest. Good job there. Yeah. And who is Kentucky's quarterback, guys?
It is Zach Calzada.
Zach Calzada, one of, I believe, 3, maybe 4 former Texas A&M starting quarterbacks who are now starting elsewhere this year.
Is this going to be our second show in a row we're referencing an incarnate word, football? So
So Road Welch, you don't see that path every day, right? First of all, he went to another SEC school. That didn't work. Then he went down to FCS, and now he's back in the SEC.
Yeah, one of the last of these 7-year quarterbacks.
Also,
right?
gave Jimbo Fisher maybe his biggest win in College Station.
Yes,
no doubt. That guy had that. Without question, that guy should never ever buy a drink in College Station ever again.
He should be the answer to a trivia question. Who beat Bryce Young in Alabama? Who beat Bryce Young head to head? And it was Zach Calzada. All right, guys, let's transition to the mailbag. As always, you can send your questions to theaudiblepod@gmail.com. Ralph, I believe this is your first time getting to answer some of these.
It is. It's very exciting.
All right.
Yes, very, very exciting.
Well, just so you know, in case you haven't, Ralph knows, the person who asked the best question of the week gets a $12 gift card to Trader Joe's. Our first question is from Paul in LA about strict media policies in college football. Hey guys, last week, UCLA coach Deshaun Foster started limiting media access to practices, claiming that opponents could go online and watch reporters' videos to scout them. With similar policies in place at USC, Nebraska, and plenty of other schools, I'm curious if you've spoken to coaches or staffers and get a sense of if this is really happening. Are teams actually scouting each other via beat writers' video?
As crazy as that might sound, that is a real thing. A lot of, first of all, the staffs are so big now that I think it's a lot easier than it was probably 10 years ago to have some personnel people going looking for stuff. Like I remembered before TCU opened up against Colorado in Deion Sanders' first game, Sonny Dykes was telling me that like he had a lot of folks looking at all this, and there was tons of footage that Colorado was putting out. Now it didn't work out great for the Horned Frogs, but they were looking for any clues and any tips they can, and I think that is a real thing. And keep in mind, there's nobody in this world more paranoid than football coaches. But they have some reason for the paranoia because they're probably doing it themselves. So why would it not come back the other way? So that is a real thing.
They have so many guys on staff now. You got to give them something to do. So yeah, scour the internet and look for video of my opponents. The video part is I understand. It's the access and other parts of the limiting and being so strict with the media policies. I don't, right? I can understand not wanting your video of your practice out there, limiting access to your players and how much reporters can see, not necessarily video, but see. I think that's just being super paranoid.
Yeah. I don't know why you couldn't just say you have access to practice, but you can't shoot video, right? I mean,
well, I think there's something more to that.
Period.
Back in the day, I think, Stu, you were at this game. There was a Northwestern USC Rose Bowl. And I forgot who was the TV reporter who did a hit after seeing, and USC's practice were, especially under Tim Teslo and the legendary SID there, were always open. I think this reporter said something like, hey, be on the lookout for like a double pass or something like that to try to show that they were there. And that did not go over well, as you can imagine, for USC.
Well, that's just dumb. Like that's sideline reporter 101. Why don't ever betray they give you access. Don't ever betray that on a broadcast. But right. Deshaun Foster, by the way, like I saw that, I think it was a reporter's tweet. It wasn't that stood out to me. It's that he's not letting the reporters interview the players, even if it's for a feature story, because he's worried the players might slip and give their opponent something.
Yeah, that's the stuff that goes overboard, and it's just complete paranoia.
All right. Frank in Sacramento. Season gets off to an ugly start. Hey, guys, I love the new format. Now, if only the games were as good, can we end it with these soccer stadium games in Europe for week 0 in college football? Last year, we had Joe Tessitore screaming his head off through 3 commercials in the last minute of Georgia Tech's upset of Florida State. This year, we had a rainy slop game that washed off the lines and logos of K-State, Iowa State after the first quarter. I turned the thing off after the 4th fumble. Well, Frank, you missed quite a bit if you did that. You should read what happened after that. There's got to be a better game to start the season with less hype somewhere. I don't have a sympathy for the ugly football. Like, that's football. It happens. But it does seem unnecessary that 2 teams in the Midwest have to go to Ireland to play a conference game.
So can I be Pollyannish on this for a second? Why I actually like this? And it goes back to, remember when Harbaugh took his team to Italy, I think. Didn't they go to Italy?
Yeah, they went
they
went a couple
point?
of places there, yeah.
For like spring practice too. I actually think, and I understand losing the home game is not great, and playing Farmageddon in Dublin, maybe not the coolest thing for fans. But you know what? College experience, like a lot of these kids will have never gone to Ireland or Europe. Like, I just think that is like a cool thing to do for college.
Why don't we do
students.
that for a bowl game? Why do we got to do that for a Big 12 game with like major implications?
Because it takes a long time to figure out who's going to go. Like, I mean, you can't just, in a week, we're going to flip the switch and send you to England to play in the Bahamas Bowl that's now in England, because the Bahamas Bowl has been everywhere but the Bahamas for the last 5 years. I just, I like it in the idea of, like, I know this sounds ridiculous. It's like studying abroad, right? Like, to a certain degree, like, and I know that's ridiculous to, like, they're not out there like really taking in a lot of the scenery. They're mostly there practicing, going to a hotel. But even if they get a little flavor for what it's like to be in Ireland, I think that's a cool thing to do for college students and kids at this age. So I actually like the idea that
Ireland
they take
opener.
games overseas.
I'm
Ireland, or they're going to play one in Germany in a couple of years, aren't they?
I'm pro sloppy football and sloppy weather, and I like it. And as long as it's like not like a health issue, like it's so bad where people are tearing ACLs or the field conditions are that bad. It was a sloppy game. It was also the first game of the season.
It ended up being a great game. I feel bad
It's
for
college
Frank.
football.
He went to mow the lawn or whatever. And meanwhile, Rocco Becht and Avery Johnson went off in the fourth quarter. Ralph, I do think we could pull off the bowl game, and here's why. 2 reasons. One, the season goes to like January 20th now. So couldn't we just stick that game like the weekend before the national championship game? And also, I only know this because my wife recently renewed her passport. They have greatly streamlined that process. You can finally do it online. So I think we could if they announce on December 7th that Northern Illinois is going to be playing in the Germany Bowl in 6 weeks, I'm pretty sure we could get that all figured out.
Again, I'm all for it. If we can do that, I'm all for it. I am not necessarily for a lot more games in Europe, but I'm for games in Europe.
It's just a shame that, not to belabor this, like my whole thing is not just about this game, but all neutral site games. These college football stadiums that are like the centerpiece of their university, 70,000, get used 7 times a year. Why are we surrendering one of those to play it somewhere that all the fans, not just the road team, have to travel to? We're going to end with a very nice note for Ralph from Dave Sharp in Chicago, Illinois. I think Ralph Russo was a great addition to the show. Quick history. Hardest I've ever laughed during a podcast was when Ralph was a guest with Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman in the old days of The Athletic. And he led off by confessing that when Ari first began appearing on Andy's podcast, Ralph was not sure if Ari was a real person or not. Ari was not similarly amused. Is that really what happened?
So I'm glad. I'm sorry. What was the emailer's name? Dave. I'm glad he thought that was the way he received that. I knew Ari before that. I have interacted with Ari, but what I meant to get across, and I did mean to get it across in an over the top manner, is Ari doesn't seem like he could possibly be a real person.
You thought it was a bit. You thought it was a bit.
I thought to a certain, but I understand that is him. No, I know that he is a bit. He is a person he is a TV character. It is truly him, but he seems like a person who was written, like a script was written out. That's what I don't know. Amazing. Like, I can't believe this is a real person is the sentiment I was trying to get across. But I love the fact that Dave really thought that I didn't think Ari was real, that Ari's persona wasn't real. But anyway, Ari will be thrilled that we're talking about him because he just likes to be talked about.
I think that there was a time.
Is he still banned from the podcast?
He was never banned.
I know
you think Bruce has to put up with me calling him a jerk. I have to put up with, like, you said something about Vanini making dirty jokes to me last week. Like, people You're making up
I
allegations.
didn't say that.
No, Bruce did.
I did not say. I think Bruce said that. Bruce likes to pick on you. I try not to.
No.
But you did ban Ari.
Never banned Ari. There was a brief period, Ralph, on Twitter, I don't know, a few years ago, where people really thought you guys hated each other because, like, you would just get so incredulous with some of his weird takes that you would. I mean, people thought like you were genuinely like furious with him or offended by him. That people didn't. Now that was a bit, right?
A little bit. We did have a frenemy relationship because he would get me so exasperated that I would want to throw him out a window, but I would never actually throw him out a window, nor could I actually throw him out a window. Ari's a big guy.
I mean, what I would just tell people is if you've never met Ari in person, if you've never had the pleasure of like spending time with Ari, he's actually, I would actually say that Ari is more ridiculous off camera than he is on the podcast. Like you're actually getting
and we love him for that.
You're getting like
and we love him for
78% version of Ari on that podcast.
Ari's also the last person Stu wants to sit next to in a press box, correct or not?
All right, we can tell this story real quick. At the national championship game last year, so Matt Baker, one of our other colleagues, brand new to the Athletic at that point, maybe had been there only a couple months, still getting to, hasn't been on the national beat before, right? Still getting to know people. Well, they had seated, the CFP had seated Matt in the last of the Athletic seats. So to the right, I think, and then Ari right next to him. Unbeknownst to me, while I was out, these guys switched the credentials so that I would be next to Ari because they wanted to spare Matt Baker of that experience.
Well, you have had the Ari experience, so we figured that was only fair that you were a little bit of a buffer between Matt and Ari, because again, that's a lot. That's a lot.
It is a lot, and you know what? I'm fine with it for the first 3 quarters. The only time I truly can't stand Ari is when it's the 4th quarter and it's time to write, and he's still going, Stewie, what would you rather do? Stewie, would you rather do this or would you rather do that? It's like there's a game going on. On that note, we got to give out the Trader Joe's gift card, and I got to think after that conversation we just had, it's going to be to Dave Sharp in Chicago.
It wasn't an actual question, but yeah, he absolutely
I didn't say ask me a question. Best email of the week.
It was absolutely the best email because it created the best conversation. And again, Ari will love the fact that we talked about him for 10 minutes.
As always, send your questions to theaudiblepod@gmail.com. And our next episode will be Sunday live at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 Pacific, live on YouTube. Bruce and I will break down everything that happened the day before. We'll see you then.